good? Welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Peter Taaffe.
I'm your other host, Bill Ogden.
And who we got a little guest host here.
Yeah, we do. Did we have? Way better than Kyle.
Amanda Orr.
So we've got Amanda Orr who helps us with all of the kind of back office and behind the scenes work here. So thank you for joining us, Amanda.
She's the only reason we haven't been canceled yet.
That's right. Every podcast is edited and lots of stuff that Bill, mostly Kyle said.
Thank you for that.
Is
Bill, mostly Kyle, but Bill does too.
Yeah, occasionally. We've cleaned it up, though, and now that we're on episode 80-something, we are very lucky to be joined by Jen Pinkerton today. Jen is here. I want to make sure I say everything right. She's a psychotherapist, high-performance coach, speaker, writer, host of the Redhead Reveal podcast, which is very good. I highly recommend it, and private practice owner of Pinkerton Psychotherapy. So thank you for joining us, Jen.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
And Jen, I've gotten to know Jen through her husband, Chad, who's a very good friend of mine and excellent trial lawyer. Most people in town would definitely people who watch the show would know who Chad is. Hopefully a future guest, because we've tried to get him on and he is so busy, mostly with his son's basketball.
Yeah, but after I'm coming on, he's going to have to come on. He won't let me, outdo him for that, for sure.
Well, Chad is a great person and great lawyer, but more importantly to me, great person. So I'm glad you all found each other, and now y'all have 4 children.
We sure do.
Collectively? Okay, great. Yes. All right. And so before we get into some of the questions, so obviously
before Peter starts crying,
the
mental health onesie. I was like, she's talking right at me.
So you have not been a psychotherapist your whole professional career. This is a recent thing. So how did you get into that?
I was always a writer by passion, by hobby, and I wrote a lot about relationships and about social musings and different things that I thought were particular of interest to me. And I decided that I would go back to grad school and actually get my master's just in psychology to kind of raise that writing opportunity, to have that extra credibility. But when I actually got into the practice of doing that, I learned how much I loved holding space for someone else. And I really understood that there was so much more to it. And I just dove in and never looked back.
In your undergrad, were you Ole Miss?
I was at Ole Miss for undergrad, and I was an English major. Writing.
And then the Grove. Saint. So beautiful. That's the best visitor game I ever went to when I was in school.
It's hard to meet that, I got to tell you.
And but both your daughters are at Alabama?
And one's at Alabama, one's at OU.
Okay, all right. There you go. Yes. Pick some good football schools. And so when was this that you went back and got the master's?
God, I'm trying to think of the year. It was before COVID, so pre-COVID, and then everything was finishing COVID time. And it was kind of a unique time to be starting a business and starting everything. And then I opened up my own practice after being at 2 other practices for a little bit and didn't look back. So I've had my practice almost 4 years now, I guess.
And so who would be your kind of most common, would you say patient or client, or what's the terminology?
I like to refer to them as clients. You'll see some therapists that say patient, but I like to get away from the medical doctrine and really look at more of a collaborative effort with my clients, so I refer to it as clients. And I have a team of therapists, and everybody has their own specific type of client that they work with. So I particularly work with relationships, attachment trauma, and, kind of stay in that wheelhouse. I also am a certified sex therapist, so I do that as well. But there's somebody for everyone at my practice. I've got people that specialize with teens, with children, with ADHD, any kind of thing that you think someone might need to get some help with. They've got it.
So you've got a team working with you of different specialties.
Yes.
And what do you have to do to be a certified sex therapist? I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah, no. I was going to say, I'm glad she's here because Peter was asking me a lot of very unique and specific questions before, and I think she might be able to answer these.
It's a long path. I mean, first you have to have your bachelor's, then you have to have your master's, then you have to be a licensed therapist, then you have to pursue the additional training for sex therapy and have your additional supervision, more so that's required that you already have required to pass your MORE exam. So it's a long road. I'm also a PhD doctoral candidate right now. I should receive my PhD in October if everything goes as planned. So it's been a long educational path for me, but I have such a passion for it that I've really enjoyed doing it. So.
Yeah, what's your focus on the PhD path?
Clinical sexology.
Okay. What's the difference between, what is sexology?
It's basically the study of sex.
Huh. That was not available. When I was declaring majors, that was not.
When you were signing up, you didn't get to choose that.
Not that I could have anything to offer that field. Bill, it'd be a learning.
Along with the relationship work that I do.
Yeah.
I'm mostly heavy in relationships. And so you really can't work with anybody on the relationship success if you don't deal with intimacy in all forms. So they really go hand in hand.
And Bill's going to retire, so I'm trying to think through some things. You got to do something when you're retired.
I made a list a long time ago, things I wanted to do instead of be a lawyer. So number one is learn how to weld. So I'm just going to...
Weld? Mm-hmm. Good.
And then kind of go from there and knock out the list. There's a lot of good golf courses in the world. I want to play them all. So,
all right. So, again, as a connection expert, you help people reveal their connectedness with their relationships and understand the root causes of beliefs and behaviors that hold them back from success.
Yes, and root causes is the most important really thing in that, because we all have experiences in our early childhood and growing up and when we're young that really shape who we are. You know, our personality that we have today, we call our personality, is nothing short than a collection of traumatic experiences, obviously.
I have a question, because there are some extremely damaged individuals out there that didn't have any real adversity growing up and didn't have any trauma, really. Like, where does that come from? Asking for a friend.
Well, I think everybody has a wound of some kind, but we have to define trauma to really understand what I mean by that, too. There's big T trauma, which is violence, being raised in a home with abuse, lack of emotional attunement or neglect. There's also little T trauma, which is more about things that have happened that made you question your own self-worth or your sense of belonging. Things that are maybe not directly related to what you might think is trauma, but it's been a wound that has stayed with you. You've carried it into adulthood. I'll give you a simple example. If someone was on the playground when you're young and you wanted to play with all these groups of kids and you didn't get to for some reason, they were maybe mean, maybe they were bullies, maybe you just didn't fit in, you might carry that into an adulthood feeling like as though you don't fit in. So you're working overtime and addressing that feeling and projecting that in all your different experiences. So that's little T trauma. I prefer to call it a wound, because trauma, is something people have a hard time, just like you're saying. You didn't have any trauma. Okay, maybe not big T trauma, but I think most people have some sort of wound or some sort of experience that has shaped them in some way.
And I think a lot of times there's people you say, oh, they didn't have any trauma, but they actually did. They've just suppressed it or don't talk about it or hide it because it's weak. And
I was 100% referring to myself with that question. I cannot think of, you think really any real trauma I ever had?
You have amazing parents that do the very best they can with what they have. They could be wonderful parents, but you might have felt that you didn't get a same amount of kudos and attention if you got a B. Maybe there were parents that just, when you made an A, it was everything. And so even though they weren't doing anything wrong, you internalized this feeling that if you weren't making an A and you weren't at the top of your class and you weren't doing everything, that you weren't enough. And then that carries on. So those are root causes that actually affect us relationally, how we interact with people in a romantic relationship, how we work with our friends, how we show up at work, whether you have a chip on your shoulder. Those kinds of things come from somewhere. There is an origin point of everything.
Well, along those lines, do you do a lot of study into family of origin?
Absolutely. Inner child work of family of origin and our attachment. Yes.
And because to me, that is like where you really learn on the family of origin stuff, just how different.
It's really eye-opening to understand how much of generational trauma is carried over. Generationally, if your parents had certain ideals or morals or belief systems that then, perpetuate down into your generation, and where that goes and how that carries, and belief systems, things that were modeled for you, even subconsciously, you don't recognize that this has become kind of a guiding force in your life.
So let's kind of focus on lawyers, because this is a legal show. So lawyers, of course, are some of the most emotionally stable, happy, healthy people. So why is that? Why are lawyers so happy? And
we're humble,
Yeah, humble.
That was the word I'm going to add. Yes.
Obviously, lawyers, statistically, we can talk about some stuff. We talked offline a little bit. Lawyers are much more likely to commit suicide or conceptualize that?
Recently that illustrated that I think it was over 66% of lawyers suffer from some sort of mental health problem or felt as though that their job and their profession had exacerbated mental health, condition with them. And then about 9% have suffered from suicide ideation. And there's a high burnout rate. There's a high degree level of depression and anxiety. And, I think a lot of that is attributed to the lack of work-life balance that lawyers have, the always being on, the performative aspect of being a lawyer. It's very high stress. And I think most lawyers are never given those tools to understand how to manage that stress.
So this question, is it chicken and the egg in that are people that have kind of problems attracted to the law practice, or is it normal people, regular people?
Some of the degenerates are like, might as well try hard in school and be a lawyer.
Or is it something that just someone who's emotionally fine gets into the legal practice and they turn into having major problems because of the nature of the practice?
I think it's both. I don't think it's really there's a clear-cut answer in that. I think you have some people that sure are affected by things and decide this is their path, and some people who really love being in an industry where it is so performative and really love the aspect of fighting. That fight sometimes is one of the biggest appeals to a lot of lawyers, to want to be able to do that, and it's kind of a release in some way. But, if you fight all day long for your job, then what happens when you come home?
Yeah, you got to turn that. We got to turn that light switch off.
And a lot of people have trouble with it.
Oh, I definitely did. I've lost a lot of friends. I mean, I definitely manage it now, but for the first 4 or 5 years to be a lawyer, I was a complete asshole. I just couldn't help it.
What changed for you?
I lost a lot. I lost a group of very, very close friends that I'd had for a very long time.
Through you yelling at them and
no, just I think she's right. There's this unauthentic personality that you have to be when you're working as a plaintiff's lawyer specifically. And if you can't figure out how to try to turn it off and be yourself, the guy that they knew before you went to school and became this and that and all that. I mean, it's tough to turn that off. And sometimes you don't want to because you feed off of it, and it's easy to feed off of, especially when you start doing bigger cases, you start being on TV, for a long time, I wanted to be famous. And then I got a little fame and I was like, I don't want anybody in my business. I just want to be left alone and do my thing. Oh yeah, for sure. There's an ego to it.
And ego is big with that. There's this sense of, I want to be successful. I want to be famous. I want to get here. And then what happens with that? And imposter syndrome can kick in. Who am I? Am I really worthy of all this? Have I earned all this? Is somebody better than me? I think imposter syndrome is a really big part of that profession as well.
And what is imposter syndrome?
It's this belief system inside, a core belief that you feel like you're really an imposter, faking through this. You don't deserve to be there. You haven't earned it, or you're not good enough. And it is a core, invalidating belief that will cause people to continue on to do more, trying to get past that. But it doesn't work that way. Nobody can get past that unless you do some internal, reflection, some inventory about how you look at yourself, how you look at life, how you look at the world.
Yeah, it's like a never-ending, hamster wheel of faking it until you make it. You just never, and then but the way you set it up, you never do make it, I assume?
Yeah.
You just keep running?
And then there's this sense of, not being authentic. You don't have any authenticity in your life then. Yeah. And so then you can feel very empty, very shallow. And that's why, honestly, I think one of the addiction rates are very high in the profession as well, because there's, some lawyers that use substances to continue to go, some that use it to numb and cope, There's also the sense of maybe becoming really successful really quickly. I think a lot of those things can contribute or exacerbate pre-existing problems or issues.
So the term authentic, comes up a lot in the sense of that's the key to happiness, is just be authentic, being authentic. But what does that mean? And I'm going to ask some dumb questions because
there are no dumb questions.
But because I hear that a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts on self-improvement, and I hear that, but I'm curious what you would say. What does it mean to live an authentic life?
Well, obviously it would be being yourself, but you would have to know who you are to be yourself. So if you don't have a good understanding of who you are, your core being, your values, your belief systems, what's made you you, have you ever done some self-reflection to understand, these are the parts of me that I really like. These are the parts of me maybe I really don't like. What are mistakes have I made in my life? What wins do I have? How do I treat other people? How do I allow people to treat me? What kind of boundaries do I have? All those things encompass being authentic and knowing who you are. But if you don't have a handle on that, then it's missing.
And in doing that, obviously you can do it on your own, but you probably better to do it with someone like you to kind of flesh those things out and help you.
I mean, therapists obviously are skilled at being able to get to that root cause soon, quickly, and help you understand that and go through that process and do a little digging and unearthing of things and processing usually repressed feelings. But I think anyone can go down a path of their own healing journey by being aware and interested. Like you're talking about, listen to podcasts, read books, get some handle on who you are and spend some time to actually pause and stop and reflect on, what kind of person am I?
Yeah, do I like that person?
Exactly, because how many times have we all, I mean, myself included, we do things and we think, wait, I don't like who I am at that moment. That's not who I want to be. But a lot of people will just shove that down and keep going and then do it again and again and again.
So from a success standpoint, just think through an example of whoever in your mind you want to think of. Someone that had been very unhappy. It can be legal or otherwise. Very unhappy, self-destructive, not good relationships. And today they're doing great on all fronts. Like what does that process look like for them to get from point A to point B? Is it therapy? Is it something other than therapy? I don't know what else there would be.
Well, I think it depends on the level of the depth of where they had to go to get to that reckoning and that awakening. If you're talking about addiction, you're going to need some professional help. If you're talking about just the way you feel about yourself, I think that, sure, working with therapists is great, but I've seen a lot of people have a lot of success just by slowing down in their life and doing some reflection. And then getting some psychoeducation, reading some books, listening to podcasts, doing things that expand, your sphere of awareness of what it takes to be the kind of person you want to be. But, we have these pre-programmed ideas of who you are, and usually we're false. Usually we're off the mark.
I blame MTV for that.
It's probably true. Think of how many things in society do shape us and that we allow to shape us.
God, the ones that we allowed to shape us, those are the ones that I'm like, I see, especially with the YouTubers and all these the younger crowd that has been extremely financially successful and have millions and millions of people. And I'm like, what are we looking at? What is this? What are we doing? But hey, more power to them, especially if they're self-aware when the camera turns off.
I feel like in order for attorneys to really think about their mental health, they also need to create mental white space in order for them to be able to go to therapy or meditation or really evaluate what's going on. But a lot of times, when they're in trial or, they're taking on a bunch of new clients, the pace because you live that life with Chad, but do you have any recommendations for people who are literally in the thick of things, but they feel like they're in crisis? How do they create that mental white space when they're always in the quote unquote OR?
But how often do they have a balance in their life as it is? Are they running themselves ragged? If you're in trial, obviously you're probably not having any sleep. I know what that's like, and you're not getting any time for yourself to do something. So you're just pushing through. That coping skill works for a while. But then what happens when you're done? Do you then move on to the next thing? Or do you stop at that time and say, okay, now I got through that. Now I need to really rest. I really need to focus on me. I've got to have some mindfulness tools, some ways to actually slow down. The simple things that you hear about all the time, but they are so impactful. Do you meditate? Do you do cold plunge? Do you exercise? Do you do anything that feeds your soul? Some sort of hobby or passion that's separate from law? Do you like to read or do you like to travel? Even if it's golf, but the problem with golf is that sometimes that it just becomes a networking thing and you're not actually enjoying the passion.
Golf is the worst coping tool. All you're going to do is get there happy and leave pissed every single time.
You're passionate.
No, I am. I enjoy it.
The outlet. But I think that so many people, have poor coping skills. And they don't understand what that even looks like. And they turn to things that are a quick fix. It's that quick dopamine, hit to feel better.
Like scrolling on your phone.
Doom scroll.
Love a little bit of scrolling. I mean, everybody does. That's where we are now in the world with TikTok and Instagram and everything else. But that's numbing. And we have to nurture. And the nurturing is actually slowing down. You cannot nurture if you're in a nonstop, fast pace. You've got to be able to dedicate some time and to be able to sit with your feelings. And that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. If you're so used to going and scrolling and on the phone and the next place here, the next thing here, until you just crash and fall asleep, you're never giving your body that time to actually reset. And our nervous systems go completely offline.
Yeah, I'm thinking through. So what advice would you give to someone like a younger lawyer who's got younger kids? Because mine are all yours are.
Yeah, you just every time you start giving a hypothetical, I'm like, he's talking about me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about like 4 kids. Like,
Oh, yeah.
like, when do you have time for self-care? Because you do the office and then you come home from the office and it's like
Kids.
baseball, t-ball, someone's sick. I mean, what advice would you give to a lawyer in that stage of life?
You have to prioritize it. You've got to prioritize it because it's your mental health. It's your ability to be regulated. It's your ability to feel safe and to feel that emotional safety that you need to think you can continue on with every life challenge that's going to come your way. So I think it has to be prioritized. When it comes to children, though, there's a lot of things you can do with your children. You can go for a walk with your kids. That is actually very, soothing. And it's been proven and shown in so many different studies about what exercise does to decrease the level of anxiety and help with depression. And I don't mean exercise where you're, lifting weights to a place to get to that, once again, performance. So I got to look good. I'm talking about the walks. I'm talking about a run. I'm talking about things that are, maybe you're into yoga like I am or something like that is soothing. And also being able to do that mindfulness, do self-reflection, think about your day, having intentions for your day, thinking about affirmations about how you think about yourself. All those things seem minor, but they're so impactful when you do them consistently.
So one thing you mentioned was intentionality. So you really have to you have to have a plan. You can't just willy-nilly.
Yes. Yeah. But why would we plan that? We plan everything else in life, That has to be the same thing.
Some people do.
You talk about cortisol and, what that does to our body, and that's all related to stress, And so I think it just is something that most people miss the boat on from failing to plan, from failing to prioritize, from not thinking, basically thinking they could get through it on their own. They don't need anything.
Until I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, at least from my perspective as a male, that was the way. If you talked about your feelings or somebody found out that you were going to therapy, everybody saw you were a little soft. Maybe he's from the Northeast. I don't know.
I think that's gotten better, though. I think that post-pandemic, people look at mental health a little differently. I think that was one things that did come out of that. And I think that there's less stigma and more people actually don't judge someone that might have before, now. And no one should. I mean, everybody should be able to prioritize their health care, mental health included. It's the same, thing to me. If you're going to go to a doctor to get some help with something, you should also be able to see a therapist if you need to do that from something you're dealing with emotionally and mentally.
Is it true what they say when it comes to the couples therapy, that it's awesome for the guys? Because it's the first time where we can win an argument with an audience?
I've heard a lot of jokes along that line where you're talking about.
But I'm saying that from stories I've heard from friends and myself included, where it was yes, this is great. So I was just...
One of the fundamental needs of all human beings are to be seen and heard. And oftentimes in a relationship, you have one or both people that don't feel seen or heard. And so, if you're sitting down and you've got actually some space and the floor to talk and your spouse, your partner is going to be forced to listen in that moment, it can be pretty transformative.
Like to jar that and sell it. What I'm feeling.
So burnout, what we hear, that's a term, but what does that look like and what does that feel like?
I think that it's most often described as feeling stuck. I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. I don't have a way out of it. This is what I got to do. I got to keep going, keep going ahead. There's a wall. There's not you're basically hitting that wall. But until then, there's no other. It doesn't seem like there's another solution. And that's that burnout where you don't feel like you can do anything different, but you just got to keep plugging. And you've lost the passion for it. You've lost the excitement for it. You're stressed. You're full of anxiety. You're probably depressed. And usually other facets of your life start to fall apart as well. But the thing is, burnout is, that is something that you can actually be proactive and say, I'm not going to let that affect me. I'm going to actually work on my coping skills. I'm going to work on my self-care. I'm going to prioritize things in my life that are going to feed my soul and actually not just think about work 24/7. I'm going to have other outlets and other interests, other things. But it's kind of foreign thought, to a lot of people.
It used to be for me, not anymore.
So what have you done? What have you done to change that?
Oh, I had a complete burnout. Like, I don't think very many people know about it, but like, I guess I got to the point where I was so strung out 24/7, started going through a divorce with a child, trying to figure that all out. And there was probably 4 or 5 months of my professional career where I just dropped the ball over and over. And I made one huge mistake, and my 2 partners called me in and they were like, I was 100% thought I was about to get fired. And they were like, we just want to know if you're okay. I was like, what? Y'all are firing me? And so that was like my big thing to kickstart me back into where I'm at now. But yeah, I was just straight up Westball and Kyle Farah.
I love hearing that you had people that were supportive of that, because it
was shocking because I was not expecting them.
It's people who will actually say, hey, are you okay? Instead of just immediately saying, well, you're not performing as you need to be anymore, so you're done.
Yeah, no, they straight up, they were like, we're not going to fire you. We're just worried. I was like,
it's compassion.
You guys care?
So what did you do to get back on track?
We've sat down together and kind of put together a plan professionally on that. And then that's when I started going to therapy. And shout out to Dirty Diane. She hates when I call her that. She's my therapist. And we have our weekly meetings. And I've seen her once out in public, and I thought she was going to run. But she's with her husband. I was like, I made eye contact from across the room, and she just looked at me. She goes, then I was like, okay, fine. Therapy was a big one for me. And I love being a dad. So that was an easy transition because he hit the age of 3. And that's for the dad. That's when we could start having fun. Because before, they're just kind of inconveniences. Not for the mom. Mom's got that bond. Look, I say this at any time. It happens less and less because most of my friends have kids now. But I was one of the younger people in my friends' crews that had a kid, and nobody gave me I didn't have any friends to it was just parents and stuff. But I told a bunch of my friends having their first one, hey, you're not gonna love it all that much for the first couple of years. We don't have that bond. They have no self-awareness, no real personality, and every time they do something, you got to react to it. And most of the time, it's when you want to be sleeping. And so it's but then once you get that every single year after that, it's better, better, better. And so that hit my stride at the same point too. And so, yeah, he's 9 now. He's still alive and breathing.
You're doing something right.
You're doing something right, yeah. And he says yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, every once in a while. So breathe.
So you touched on self-care. Is that just doing things like figuring out what feeds your soul, whether it's yoga, getting a massage?
Nurturing. I like to think of it as nurturing instead of numbing. Self-care to some people is, I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to be on the sofa all day Saturday and I'm going to watch Netflix all day. Well, that may be a lot of fun, and sometimes it's necessary to maybe numb out like that is. But the numbing out heart means we've disassociated from all of our feelings. We're just going to be a couch potato. We're invested in what we're watching, and there's no reflection. And that's the part that's really important, is to be able to say, we want to be present, and you're going to have self-care, and you're going to nurture because you're present in that moment. You want to be intentional about it. You want to explore how you're feeling. And, also, what kind of support system do you have? Do you have people in your life that are genuine and authentic that you can be with? Do you have friends that support you, that love you, that you feel as though you are at home with? And that's also really important, because we can't just faint on all the time. We have to have places and people that feel safe to us.
Yeah, you got to have your real friends and your fun friends.
Exactly.
Well, they can overlap, but
you got to be a friend to have a friend, which is another part of that.
Along those lines, you see this a lot, toxic relationships. Or do you, as a therapist, generally, will you go through that and kind of try to help your client identify toxic relationships and how to? Maybe you need to depart, and how do you depart? How do you do that?
Well, most people miss the red flags. There's always red flags. And I think learning the difference between the red flags and the green flags is huge, because then you can maybe not get into that relationship the next time. But there's a reason that people are attracted to a certain kind of person. And usually we attract, what we allow will continue, and we continue to attract the same thing over and over and over again until we address it. And so if if you have a very anxious attachment style because you have some stuff you need to work through, you're going to be attracted to maybe that avoidant. And then y'all are just...
What's the avoidant?
Very, this shows a much more distant, a little bit, a lot of retreating, not very invested in that relationship. And that anxious person is consistently trying to get what they need from that relationship. And so it's a push-pull constantly. But in reality, an avoidant person actually wants and craves the same level of connection as that anxious person does, but they just go about it in a very different way. It's kind of like self-sabotage.
Yeah. So how does the avoidant person... How does that reconcile themselves between an anxious and an avoidant?
Learning how to be more secure, which is in the middle. And both people learn how to heal the things that have held them back, work on some of that inner child family of origin we were talking about, understanding who they are as a person, trying to get to the root of why am I showing up this way,
I think Peter was asking because Kyle's not here and we can actually ask those questions. Yeah. He's the toxin part of all of our relationships.
Got it. Sorry, Kyle.
Here's the reason I will go to therapy.
Didn't mean to sell you out right now.
Do you ever, and there we go, there's young Ogden walking through here. Yeah. Proof is in the pudding. Do you ever recommend, I've heard of these like Blake McCoskey, of Tom Shoes, went to one of these very intensive kind of inner child things. Do you find the time that sometimes you'll recommend that type of, I don't even know if it's therapy, it's just like...
It is therapy. It's a form of therapy. It's basically a deep dive into your family of origin and your attachment wounds. But you can do the same kind of thing in therapy. It is something that most therapists are going to tackle that. Whether you really realize you're tackling that or not, that's kind of the path you're going. Because in order to heal from anything that's holding us back, we have to understand what that is. You have to have a little bit of a sense of, accountability and inventory of what am I doing in my life? And then where did I learn how to do that? What was modeled for me? Or what am I thinking about myself and these limiting beliefs, these cognitive distortions that maybe I've kind of walked through this distorted viewpoint my whole life. And so I think, those kind of intensives are great if somebody wants to invest the time to do that. But I don't think you have to do that to get to that place. It's probably just a shortcut. You go for a short period of time, very intense, all day long. I know of a place that does that. It's a week long, and that's what you do all day, every day. But a lot of people would think, I cannot do that. That would be too hard. And some people prefer to have a little bit more of a balance of kind of, dipping their toe in that water slowly to feel more comfortable with exploring some of those things.
I went on a silent retreat. That was fun. For 4 days. Nobody that worked there.
Did you speak after when you were done?
It was like I had realized when I got home and I was just sitting there and I lived by myself and I didn't have anybody there, but I just thought to myself for a little bit, I was like, when was the last time I said anything? Like even at the end of it, like even the goodbye, it wasn't like a rule or anything. And I walked back here, just walked away into the little van and they took me to the airport. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that was really cool. They didn't survive from COVID because I was going to go back like every single year, but they didn't make it through COVID. It was just outside of Santa Fe.
That's a forced reflection is what that is. By having the inability to be articulate, you have to reflect inward. I mean, that's all that is you are forced to actually sit with your feelings and your thoughts and your emotions. And, so many of us run from that.
Well, there's a room in Minneapolis. It's the quietest room in the world. And it's like designed for it. And you can only the average person can only stand like so many minutes in it before you start going like crazy in your own head because you can hear every single thing that your body's doing. It's supposed to be, I don't know how to get into it.
Is that good or bad?
I don't know. But I'm excited about it.
Solitary confinement is a form of confinement. I mean, for a reason.
I think it's a form of torture at this point.
We are, as human beings, we feed off other people, as energy.
Did you journal a lot while you were on your...
I didn't. I just kind of wandered. I didn't know what... I was just there trying to figure it all out. And it was like... I want to say there's probably only like 10, maybe 15 cabins. And I mean, we were all spread out and there were like blinders for like back patios. So you couldn't even see the other ones. And you just kind of stare out into the desert and kind of figure it out with your own thoughts. It was fun though. I had fun. It was helpful.
Was there like a moment where they blew a whistle and that's when everyone stops talking?
Oh, it was like from the moment they send you all the stuff when you go. And so as you arrive, like even checking in, just like slide the ID over and He's kind of, it was a lot of head nodding. It's kind of like when you go to like a foreign country in a language you don't speak. It's just a lot of pointing. And but it wasn't even that much pointing because it was like set food beforehand. You filled out everything you wanted, so like there was no.
Would you have your meals together? You just sit there and not taller?
They bring them to you, yeah, or bring them to wherever you want, wherever you were, and you kind of had an idea when that was going to be. So,
but anything like that, whether it's what you're talking about, someone else did, I think anything that actually forces you to be self-reflective and self-aware is, certainly taking you down the path of where you want to go.
So there's a meditation place actually right around here called Current Meditation.
Okay.
I love it. You're in a hammock, like everybody's in their own hammock, and you're like curled up in this cocoon, and they do a sound bath.
I love sound
with the bowls, and it's for like an hour. And I remember last summer, I was going through a breakup, and I went for the first time, and I just like bawled my eyes out because you really don't sit and think about what's going on when you're hurting and, like stay with yourself. But meditation does force you to do that. And I told myself, I was like, I'm going to keep coming every day until I can get through it without crying. And it was so good. It really was. Like,
because you processed your feelings during that time.
Yeah.
And you were still enough to do it. Versus if we just say, oh, yeah, I'm going to process everything all day long while I'm at work. You never get to that.
No.
You never access it.
But that forced, like, introspection, that's such a good term.
I love that. Yeah.
Why does this sound bath? How does that help with meditation?
It's a frequency that it's basically a bowl. And, there's a few different kinds. But it's a bowl, and it has a little... It reminds me of, I'm forgetting the name of it, but when you would grind medicine up, like pharmacists do, what's that called?
Mortar and pestle.
Thank you, mortar. It's like that, but it's like a little piece that goes around the bowl, and it's a frequency and a sound that has kind of much like if you think about wine glasses, how you can do that. So there's different frequencies, and there's been certain megahertz are proven that are more calming than others and can access a place of peace and stillness and presence, and so by doing that, it's kind of signals to your body, to your nervous system, okay, now we're going to be at peace, we're going to relax, we're going to really think about things. And I think it's more of a cue than anything else, but it really allows you to get to a different place in your mind.
432 hertz. That's the frequency that water and sand ripples. It's supposed to be like one that's like the Zen frequency.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, if you look at, the different frequencies to even access for if you're doing like a form of therapy, EMDR, where using basically tapping into how your brain works with when you're in REM sleep, your body's highest form of cellular turnover, and you can access memories and work with memories in a different way, things that are traumatic. So it's just been proven that sound is such a big part of that. It can have such a big part of healing.
Are memories like non-drug induced psychedelics? Because it seems that way.
Well, I don't necessarily know if they're that, but I do think that psychedelics are one of the things that people use to access those memories. And
yeah, I saw MDMA is making some huge moves towards depression.
Change that has happened in this industry for sure, and I think it's wonderful. I mean, if you think back before any sort of world we're living, say, go back to shaman, go back to Indians, go back to a time before when medicine was used in that way. That's what they would do to actually heal things, to access feelings. And now we're in a society, in a world where we don't touch feelings very well. Most people don't, unless you're being very intentional and decide to go down that path. But psychedelics allow you to go back and access those feelings. So a lot of people really use that for therapy in order to be able to heal from things and they can't talk about it, they can't deal with. And especially with extreme trauma, it's so successful. A lot of people have enjoyed, being able to go for a short term, kind of like what we're talking about, that intensive. I'm going to go, I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to feel better. And it's been proven to help with addiction and depression, a lot of other things as well.
Yeah, I know soldiers.
PTSD.
Yeah, PTSD is a big one.
I think it's amazing. It's wonderful. I'm a huge proponent of it.
Is it legal?
It's not legal in the U.S. yet, but it will be. I mean, there's
I know they didn't test, yeah.
Studies on it. There's so many different renowned universities and theorists that are really taking it to a much, more present place. I think it'll certainly happen. But right now people have to go to either Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, different places like that.
Oregon, I think, is...
Don't book your flight yet.
Yeah, I think Oregon has a...
Oregon might have psilocybin.
Yeah, they're doing some...
It's weird because I learned this kind of recently, but like there's a place in Austin, you can get a prescription for ketamine in Texas. and it's like pharmaceutical grade. I was just like, you're just handing ketamine out to everybody?
Yeah.
Well, the idea of using ketamine is it is proven to help with depression. One of the best ways to deal with that, but it's the best way to use that is under the guided care of someone that is licensed to work through that process with you. And so they guide you through that. You access some feelings and emotions, and they walk through that process. And it's really, it's just one of those levels. We were talking about psychedelics. There's ketamine, there's psilocybin, there's ayahuasca. There's so many different things. There's ibogaine, different types that they're better for different things. But it's certainly interesting to see where the industry is going to go.
20 years ago, people thought you were talking about Burning Man. Now it's just actual medicine. It's nice to see the field evolving.
Yeah, ayahuasca is on the high end, right? That's like the most intense.
And ibogaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, journaling. People always use that. I'm talking about different self-care. But what is the beneficial effect of journaling?
It's the same kind of thing where we're going to be present. We're going to be intentional about it. And think about when you write, and a lot of people recommend actual pen to paper, but I do think it's fine keyboard as well. But it's the motor eye function, as well that you're tapping into. You have to really focus to be able to do it. It's not, we're not going to be able to drive down the road while journaling. We're actually going to be intentional about it. And there's been so many studies that have proven that if you actually write about something that has been painful to you, and you do it over a period of a certain amount of days, repetitively, for a period of time, it lessens the effect of it. It no longer feels as heavy. It's not that it's gone. It's not that it's a cure-all, but it lessens the impact of it because we've come to terms with how we feel. We've actually processed those feelings in a very different way.
So similar to talking with a therapist, so will you give your clients some journal topics like, hey, why don't you write this down since I can't talk to you 24/7?
Right. Prompts and being able just to suggest this is something that would really help you. And some people really want to shortcut things. Some people want to do homework. They want to work on it outside. But some people don't. They say, I can only carve out these 50 minutes once a week when I'm here. So it depends on the person, but I do think it's really effective. And the big study came out from University of Texas actually recently about journaling and how impactful it is, to people being able to lessen the impact of things that are painful when they write about them. So, I'm a huge proponent of that too.
Who are some
Journaling here?
I've had fits and starts where I've done it, and I'm a believer in handwriting. I just always felt like that. It gets all three. It gets your brain and your eye and your eyes, ears. If you if you're self-talking it, and your hands.
It's cathartic.
Yeah, it just after a while your hand gets tired. I can type.
I'm not used to it.
What about you, Amanda? Any journaling ever?
Yeah, I love journaling. I do morning pages, so 3 pages every day, just nonstop writing, just to empty my brain out, and then, get on to work.
And it's the stream of consciousness that's so helpful, because some people say, well, I don't remember anything traumatic to write about. I don't know what to write about. The stream of consciousness is even helpful. It's just, what are you thinking? And naturally, I think we go into our intentions or what we have planned of the day. And then you might realize you have feelings wrapped around your daily activity that you weren't even aware of just by that stream of consciousness of writing.
There you go.
I loved this free session. This was great.
Yeah, right. Bill, anything else you want to unload on us?
No, I got way too much to unload.
Do you still see Diane?
Oh yeah.
Not my wife, Diane.
Yeah.
Your therapist, Diane.
No, I've never seen your Diane. Once a week.
Good. And so would you recommend, and you've been doing it a while, obviously you
Oh, it saved my life. Yeah, it saved me from who I was. I think I would have evolved into the lawyer that just needed more. There was not an amount of money or an amount of success that would have been enough. And it got me to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to keep doing it. So every morning I wake up and I'm stressed about what's next and how much money I have out on the line of credit, or even before I was doing the bigger cases, it was stressing about all the different things I had to do for other lawyers. So I just didn't like waking up and always worrying.
Yeah.
No matter what day.
Kind of void, like some sort of hole, an empty void.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Hole in your heart.
Yeah, and I was terrified to take off a significant amount of time because of that anxiety that it would give me. So I never really even gave myself a chance to address it in any way.
How about the role of faith, whether you're Christian or Jewish, Hindu, how does that play into self-care, happiness, feeling the void that we just talked about?
I think that for people that do have faith, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, for sure. I think we all need to believe in something. And if you have something that you feel like you can really connect to in that way, that drives you, that you have some passion about, and you feel as though you're very understood in the presence of that, I think that's wonderful. But some people don't have that. You have to find whatever it is that's going to work for you, whatever it is that feels authentic to you. It's back to that authenticity piece again. If anybody hears this and says, well, I hate to write, well, then journaling is not going to work. It's not going to like it. It's not going to feel good. It's going to feel stupid to you. And you have to go with something that you think, oh, you know what, I'm kind of curious about that. I mean, I had somebody recently who, really rejected all the things we're talking about. But when I suggested, how about cold plunge? They're like, oh, yeah, I did that playing football in high school. Okay, I could maybe do that. And so they start cold plunging and they start being intentional about it. And they start understanding, how it affects how they feel and the euphoria from that dopamine hit and reducing inflammation in their body. And then suddenly now they're a little more into their wellness. Now they're eating a little bit better. Now they decide to maybe take a walk at night, and instead of smoking that cigar. I mean, these little things that start changing in small ways to feel like you're being more intentional about your health overall. And I think if you naturally are looking for your health physically, there usually is some component that you might consider, okay, then now maybe I need to tackle that mental part of it too. And I think they go hand in hand. I mean, the body keeps the score of everything. So our body is so connected to how we feel mentally. And if we don't take care of ourselves in that way, we're not going to feel good in the other way.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're dealing with a client and they're just pushing back on everything, you're like, how about this? How about this? Yeah. I mean, what's really going on there? I mean, what do you?
Well, for something to change, then something has to change. And they came to me for help. So obviously you're going to have to make some sort of movement that's going to be different than what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a resistance, obviously, and there's fear. I think there's a lot of fear of being exploring about our feelings, especially if you grew up thinking that was not okay. Kind of like what you touched on a little while ago, like that would people call you soft, maybe if you use.
Yeah, I mean, as a guy, I think we have it a lot worse. Just generally, not a lot of people ask you how you're doing, and it's a cultural thing. I think it more so in the South. And like the manly man, right. High testosterone, red-blooded, meat-eating, womanizer.
This way, like the person that's more emotionally regulated, the person that is in touch with their feelings, actually then doesn't lose their shit, if I can say that. The person that feels more about aware of who they are, they're better able to handle things at work and at home.
They never blow up because there's nothing to blow.
Exactly. And so to me, there's such a different way to look at that. Because I think that's the strongest person in the room, It's a change from what's the norm.
Yeah.
And I mostly see male clients. I just have a lot of male clients that come for that exact same reason.
Do you do couple therapy?
I do couples and individuals.
What are, couples-wise, what are the...
I'm so glad Kyle's not here for this. Yeah. Every time you ask a question, I immediately think in my head, he's talking about him and Dan.
Yeah.
I'm just it makes me chuckle.
So, particularly with where lawyer is one of the, or maybe both parts of the couple, what are some of the kind of top three big issues you see with them, and then how can they deal with those?
I have so many lawyer clients. So I see a lot of presenting concerns about, they don't make time for each other, that everything's all work, and that when they do make time for each other, it's missing, it feels empty, it's missing the mark. There's not a lot of emotional connection. I think that's a huge thing. And I think the high stress part of it, there's so much depression, I think, that goes with that. And I have a lot of people that have come just from the depression aspect. I feel like my spouse is depressed. All they do is work, and we don't connect, and it's not any fun, and we're not really enjoying our marriage or our relationship. It's pretty common.
And then, so how can they, what do you recommend on that? Go take a vacation together? Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Sure. I mean, resets are great. I mean, obviously you're going to go get away from it all and you're going to reconnect. If you can be intentional about connecting when you're there, I think that's great. But I think you have to actually do a little bit of work in that same place. You have to come to therapy. You've got to be able to talk about those things and feel as though, just like you were talking about, everybody has a chance to actually, talk about what they feel and be heard. because that's a big part of it. Sometimes people are afraid to say what they're really feeling because they either don't want to hurt their partner or they're afraid of what the repercussion might be if they do that. You know, their partner might not be able to face that and just want to end the relationship when in fact all they really want to do is work on it and improve it.
Okay.
It's easy to run from your problem.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
For sure.
I think we covered a lot of the stuff that I wanted to cover.
Amanda?
Yeah, what's your trauma?
That's so much. No, I think I am so proud of you because I became friends with you while you were working through your PhD, and I had no idea. Like, we were hanging out and you were normal and this great mother. Your girls were graduating, you're getting them ready for college. And then like one night we were texting and you were like, oh yeah, I'm studying for my PhD. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? You're doing all that. So I'm really proud that you actually, you did that and you finished it on time.
I got to tell you.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to even what we're talking about with lawyers. It's a passion for me, just like most lawyers, I think, is a passion to be a lawyer. And it's so important to figure out what you love to do. It's going to feed you, but then you can't get lost in it. You know, that's the wrap up to that concept is you can excel and you can be, win in every way that for your own predefined success goals, but you can't get lost in it. And you better make certain that you're in touch with who you are and you're authentic about it and you're living a life that you're really proud of.
So who, besides your podcast, who are some other podcasts that you would recommend besides this one, of course? And
honestly, for mental health, come down there.
For your mental health, listen to ours. But who are some out there that you like, that you listen to?
I'll tell you, one of the people that I'm so impressed with as a doctor and a theorist is Dr. Gabor Mate. He doesn't have his own podcast, but he is on just about every big podcast that you can find. And he's somebody that I really, really love. Also, Esther Perel has her own podcast, and she does specialize in relationships and basically the deficits that occur in relationships and how to get past that. So she's somebody else that I really enjoy.
How do you spell the first name, please?
Dr. Gabor, Gabor, and his last name is Mate. He's Hungarian.
Okay.
And he's written many books, and he's really amazing. But Esther Perel, from a relational side,
and she goes into some more of the sexual stuff as well. So,
back to that, Peter. Back to that.
No, I like her on because I listen to all these other ones. I've seen her come up, and I know there's been a lot. This is intimacy. Let's say intimacy instead. No, there's one podcast I started listening to recently on.
I feel like we are so lucky that we have at our fingertips so many different ways to absorb that knowledge. And it can be so fun to actually connect with your partner in that way too. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They listen to their podcast in the car on the way, and they never do that with their person. But I've seen so many relationships that start doing that, and they actually start connecting over it. It's a very easy way to kind of establish a new something that you can do with somebody else.
Yeah. There's a guy it's called Feel Better, Live More with Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. And the Gabor Mate has been on there a lot. I've just started following that.
There's so many out there. I mean, if you search, you go and search for anything that's oriented in therapy, you're going to get so many options. I just love that people are interested or aware of it, because there's not a person alive that can't improve. And we all can suffer from depression or anxiety or anything else. And I think that it's so empowering to know that you can actually work on that on your own. You don't have to go like to your sturdy Diana, but you have it.
Dr. D.
But you also have that at your fingertips. And I think that it's important. And I like knowing that people are, interested in that. And, maybe working in environments where that's promoted, just like with you, having partners actually sit down and want to say, hey, are you okay? I think if we had a lot more of that, we'd had a lot less of all those awful statistics we were talking about in the beginning.
Yeah, it's from like an older lawyer standpoint, or like just in a lawyer like me that has there's associates that are from, like, I'll ask them, like, hey, you doing okay? Need anything? Are you sure? That kind of thing. Yeah. But then I also know that, like, at our firm, it's tough love as well. Like, if you mess up, you're gonna know know where you stand at all times. Yeah, when you do good, you're praised, but when you do bad, you definitely know about it. Mm-hmm. But there's a.
Are you the separate position, or are you letting them know about it side of things?
Both, yeah. I mean, I'm probably not the best at either at our firm, but I make sure that it's communicated, and then I'll go to my partners and let them know if I think I might see an issue. We've seen them before, it's especially at what we do. It's super high stress, 24/7, and so when we see the eggs start to crack, that's when we'll pull back a little bit and step in and help out. So.
And something as simple as like breath work, we didn't talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
John's one of the easiest things.
What's the guy that's
Wim Hof.
Yeah, Wim Hof. Yeah,
he's the Iceman basically, who basically combined the breath work with cold plunge, but understanding how to breathe. We think, we all breathe all day long, but there are ways to actually really calm your nervous system. There's ways to use color breathing to actually breathe out negative emotions, breathe in, more positive emotions. And a lot of people think, oh, this is way too woo-woo maybe, and I don't want to go there with it. But if anybody would actually take the time to even just learn one way to breathe different, there's one way to calm yourselves with breath, even just when you're stressed, it's really transformative. I mean, think about it. You're in Houston. You're having a road rage in the car. If you learn how to actually breathe for a moment, it'll go right past you.
And it's just as simple as like taking a 10-second deep inhale, 10-second exhale.
One of the easiest things is even going whatever your natural inhale is, then exhale for twice as long, and do it at least 3 times. Just that. It's that forced breath that's a little bit longer that forces you to be still and slow down. We go back to that slow down all the time. If we slow down and we give our nervous system a chance to actually calm down, then we feel like, okay, we feel a lot more peaceful now. We feel a lot better now. And we don't necessarily need to lash out like we were going to.
Yeah. Pointed at Peter on that one correctly.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it's foo-foo, but woo-woo, sorry. Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, Pete, see where I see this culture of the South? You're
that up.
Doing box breathing right now.
It's documented scientific proof, right, that this helps with anxiety and blood pressure and all that. It just really, I've just been walking, like in between mediations, I'll just go walk.
Let me get you a walk.
30 minutes and listen to some. No, you want to be outside. You want to be in nature.
I'll say that years ago, this didn't exist. But now, as last year and this year, I probably go speak at least once a month to a company working with people on how to stay regulated, how to stay emotionally regulated and not, become emotionally irrational, how to do breath work, how to calm yourself down, how to understand how your nervous system works. And that did not exist a few years ago. But now it's consistently that a company is calling me in to do that because I think people recognize that's so helpful. If you just even have those basic tools in your back pocket, you automatically feel a little bit more empowered to stay in a place where you feel more at peace.
Yeah.
And so it's a great shift. I like it.
Okay. Any books that you find yourself recommending to your clients?
Gosh, you're giving me this on the...
Well, you mentioned...
When are you going to write a book, by the way?
I actually have a literary agent. I'm working on it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Next year in 2025, I got a great literary agent, and that was a big game changer for me, so I'm excited about it.
Okay.
And get it, be writing it yourself, or is it a ghostwrite type thing? Nice.
Yeah. All of me. So I'm excited about it for sure, but I don't know. I might have to think of what I really want to recommend. I did a book challenge last year, and I did 52 books in the year. Every week, I would read a book and put it on my socials about a book I'd recommend. So there's so many, it's really hard for me to pick.
So, okay, they can follow, what's your Instagram or Twitter?
Instagram, Jen B. Pinkerton, Jenn B. Pinkerton, or Redhead Reveal, or Pinkerton Psychotherapy. You can find me in so many places.
And so
there's a whole book challenge. There's a section there on all the books that I've recommended last year.
Nice.
And so there's a lot of resources that are available for people, for sure.
Okay.
Following.
And the website for your practice?
PinkertonPsychotherapy.com.
Okay. And redheadreveal.com, or is that?
Reveal is just the podcast.
Okay.
Or Spotify or YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see you get some more views.
Any other locations they can find? I think you covered everything.
I think that's it.
Or at a basketball tournament.
You can find me pretty easy in a crowd. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say a basketball tournament for.
I know it's a part of those, and really, I was not. I'm really a self-professed new lover of basketball. I've never really been into sports, honestly, until my stepson, is so good at it, so into it. By osmosis, I've learned more than ever. But oftentimes, my husband corrects me because I really don't know what I'm talking about. But I enjoy being a fan for him for sure.
If you don't know too much, you can never get in trouble for yelling at the refs. So
I don't do that.
there you go.
He's got that.
Yeah, does it? Good.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I remember Chad and I were trying a case down in Galveston Federal Court, and Jen was down there like every day, and I was so impressed that.
I had never seen him.
Yeah.
I had never seen him in court. And there were so many people in our family that have seen him and would talk about it, and friends. I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to want to see what this is like. And I loved it because I got to see a whole different side of him. It was really fun.
Yep, that was part of the. Well, if you want an example of like why trial is really not that fun,
Hey, you don't need to give me examples. I've been there.
we were up. Chad and I were up till 3:00 every morning going through stuff. So
Yeah, that doesn't seem fun at all.
no, but good memory now. It sounds fun now. Well, Jen, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we covered everywhere to find you. We want to make sure of that, and we know how to find Amanda Orr at Orr Strategy Group, and Josh Belland at
chaostheory.digital.
Yeah, you got
no way you were getting that out.
And of course, follow us on not as many great places as Jen, but at Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok.
There you go.
Soon to be X/Twitter more so, and Facebook coming soon to a theater near you.
I'll follow you and you follow me because I got to see what the Dirty Verdict's got on TikTok.
It's just a lot of Kyle and I having twerk competitions.
Twerk.
That's what I was thinking. I'm going to see some dance moves.
No, but we should start doing some of those.
We've got a strategy meeting, and yes, dance moves are on the.
I got to do one single video with some dancing because it goes against kind of my comfort level, and it was one of the highest ones. It was ridiculous.
Maybe we'll do a TikTok Dirty Verdict, the redhead reveal challenge.
We should do a TikTok when we finish the calendar. We should just do a TikTok, just flip through all the different pages of us in firefighter outfits.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean that's an idea.
That's Kevin.
It is. I'm excited.
I gotta get my Ozempic just a little bit.
Get it dialed in. Yeah. Gonna go keto for 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Well, very good. Thanks for joining us. We will bid you good night.